Hey guys, welcome back to another how-to video from Audi C7 owners. Today I'm going to show you how to fully disassemble and inspect your supercharger. So I just actually got mine put back together. Had a couple hiccups here for me. I went to go put the coolant pipe here, the crossover pipe back on, and I accidentally got the torque setting wrong and I snapped one of the bolts. So I had to go buy an extractor and get that, but luckily crisis averted, was able to fix it. But this step is going to show you how to remove the crossover pipe, how to remove your throttle body, how to remove this plate here, this flange plate for this vacuum line, and it's going to show you how to remove the Supercharger Intercooler Cores. Which here you go, in the back here. There's a gasket in between the actual supercharger intercooler and the body of the vehicle, or I'm sorry, the body of the supercharger. I'm gonna show you the easiest way to remove those without damaging any part of the supercharger intercooler. It's super simple. All you need is my favorite tool in the garage, a piece of 2x4. So check out the video. This video can also be used if you're planning on taking your supercharger apart to send out to get ported and polished. This would be the same steps. The only thing that you would have to do that I didn't do on this video is remove these these are actually air pressure sensors, I believe. There's one here, and those are going to be two, I think they're T30s on each side, and you unscrew those and pull those out. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else in the back that you have to do. There might be one more thing, which it would be readily apparent to you whenever you go to remove all this stuff. But this is how you would get your supercharger set up and ready to send to somebody like Shorty's Racing or Joker's Performance, something like that, to have them port and polish your supercharger. So I hope this helps you guys and makes things a little bit easier for you and gives you the confidence to do this job on your own. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if there's anything I could have done differently and or better. This will also show you how to clean the intercoolers. One thing about cleaning the intercoolers, I use Simple Green, and someone pointed out to me that Simple Green can be corrosive on aluminum, which your supercharger intercooler cores are aluminum. I soaked mine for 24 hours and there was no damage to them at all. I know someone else who's done this as well and put their intercoolers back in their supercharger and have no issues whatsoever. Obviously, wouldn't let it sit in there for like a week or anything. I did a 24-hour soak. You could probably get away with a 12-hour soak just fine. But anyways, check it out. Let me know what you think. And yeah, we'll see you guys at the end of the video. Hey guys, so while I was doing my PCV change, of course, the supercharger has to come off. If you guys have been following the channel or the Instagram page for a while, you know that I've been chasing an issue with higher IATs. I've got the biggest heat exchanger Merc Racing has to offer. I've got the CWA 103 coolant pump. I've fully bled the engine perfectly as best of my ability as I can figure out, and I'm still on my pulls in a fourth gear pull or doing 1 through 4. I'm still getting up into about the 80 degrees Celsius range, which is just over what everybody suggests that you should have, and I'm only stage 2 single pulley. So I've got this off, and me and Jose from Merc Racing were talking, and we were thinking that maybe some of the supercharger intercooler seals were starting to go bad and leaking hot air towards the temp sensor. So while this is off, I'm going to be opening this up and pulling out our supercharger intercooler cores. So I figured I'd make a video to show you how to remove the throttle body since it's off and how to remove the supercharger intercooler cores. Should be relatively simple, but we know how that goes with me in projects sometimes. But let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove the supercharger crossover coolant pipe, which is the dual pipe that runs across the front of the supercharger. This is what feeds coolant back and forth from each supercharger core that connects to the end of each supercharger intercooler core. So these are T25s, and this is where you're going to need a special tool to get in on these inside Torx screws. I went online and I got a set of these extended Torx bits or Torx drivers for maybe I think it was like $6 or something like that. So these will allow us to get in here and not worry about hitting the pipe. You really don't want to damage this crossover pipe. I think it's near $160, or I don't know, it's over $100. I know that. It's not cheap. So we're gonna go ahead and remove these and get this pipe stored somewhere safe. Okay, so that just pops right off. If you look in here, I'll show you, you've got 4 gaskets that you're gonna have to replace. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna set this off to the side. We'll clean it up and remove these gaskets in a little bit. But you can get these from FCP Euro. That way, if you ever have to do this again, these are gonna be warranted. But we're gonna go ahead and get these cleaned up, and we're gonna get the surface of our intercooler cores cleaned up, and be right back. Okay, the next step is going to be removing this part of the throttle body. We're actually moving the throttle body itself because this is in the way of accessing the passenger side supercharger intercooler core. So this is 4 T30s, 1, 2, 3, 4. And guys, I would not use an impact gun of any kind to remove this stuff. I would stick to hand tools here, or at least crack them open with hand tools and then move to an impact if you want. But you don't want to strip anything here. Okay, so we got all 4 bolts off, and we're about to pull this throttle body off. Now when you do this, just keep in mind it's going to be 2 separate pieces that come off. And so you've got 1 and then 2. You can see these little nubs here. These, once we pull this apart, you can see that's how this aligns into the throttle body. One nub goes into the bottom there. The other nub right here goes into that one. So that's how you know to align these back up. Now, we're gonna set this somewhere safe. We're gonna go and clean the mating surface of anything here for the throttle body. We're gonna inspect everything, make sure it looks good. I'm gonna set it off to the side, out of the way, where it can't get hurt. Here, we've got 2 gaskets. We got one on the inside here, one on the inside here. Sorry, we got one here, one here. I bought new gaskets for this, so we will be replacing them, but these honestly don't look bad at all. They actually look pretty good. So, but these gaskets, unfortunately, are pretty expensive. If you damage one, they're, I think, $30 for the gasket set, maybe, something like that. I know one gasket set is 60, one is a lot more, or I'm sorry, one set is 60, one is 30. And I've got this grease on here. I'm not exactly sure what that's from, but we're gonna get all that cleaned up. Okay, we got all that grease cleaned up off the inlet here. I'm not sure what it was. I'm curious if that maybe came from the intake that I have on the car, but it's not an oiled intake, so I'm not sure. I'm gonna look into that, but otherwise this is cleaned up, and we'll set that off to the side. And now we can start to work on removing the Torx bits from the back of each of the supercharger intercooler cores. There are 6 of them, and let's see here, I think they're T30. They're T30, there's 6 on each side. We also are gonna remove this mounting plate here. We're just gonna get it out of the way. There's a T30 on the top here, and then there's 2 T30s on the side. So we're gonna remove that to get it out of the way so we have clear and open working area, and then we'll start working on these. Okay, so that is loose. Now all we have to do is, well, I guess I should have removed this first anyways, because we are gonna have to remove this so that we can move this plate out of the way, because that's holding it on there. Okay, so this thing's a little tricky. There's a prong on the back, just like this right here, and it's designed where you pinch here and pull up, but there's a good gasket in here that's keeping it sealed. So what I do, the best way to get this is I got a pair of needle nose pliers to get the pinch all the way up. I grab on the back and I kind of lift forward to get this rear lip out from underneath here. And then while I'm giving pressure here, I'm gonna go in with this pick tool. I'm gonna go in under here and lift it out. There we go. And that comes up. So you can see all those gaskets on there, and they're all in good shape, so I don't think we need to replace any of those. But we're gonna set that off on the side. So now you've got free and clear access to both sides of your intercooler cores from the back of the supercharger. So let's go ahead and remove these 6 T30s on each side, and then we'll be ready to start trying to get this thing out. Okay, so for this, I'm gonna, once again, just crack these open manually with just this driver and my socket. I'm gonna do it in a star pattern just to make sure that these loosen up evenly. But I'm just gonna crack these, and then after that I'm gonna use my drill to actually remove them all the way. But we don't want to strip any of these. Okay, so now the intercooler cores have been completely unscrewed on both sides, and now we have to somehow separate these from the actual supercharger. This is very soft metal back here, and this is very soft metal back here as well. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a rubber mallet, and we're gonna lightly, very lightly tap here, and we're going to try and nudge this out a little bit to where we can get a little bit of gap between the back of the intercooler core. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try and just very lightly tap and see if it moves at all. And I don't think they are. I don't think these have ever been removed. Got to go very light because this is aluminum. It can bend, and if you bend it, you're gonna have to replace them, and they're not cheap. Okay, as you can see, I got the first one started. It's popped out a little back here. I'm gonna show you how I did it. The rubber mallet itself wasn't doing it perfectly, and the trick is what you're trying to do is to distribute the force of the impact evenly across the surface without damaging it. So what I did was I literally just took a block of wood, got it flat up against it, and gave it a few smacks. And that's it. That one right there, that was the first time I really worked on it other than a few taps otherwise. But now I don't even have to pry back here, which is good because I don't have to worry about damaging the intercooler. And once you have these started, you should be able to just pull them out. And that is what your Supercharger Intercooler Core looks like. Mine actually look really good. There's you can see the dark 3 spots. That's where it's sitting over your intake manifold. There's a little junk here. I'm gonna have someone else who knows what they're looking at tell me if this looks all right. This seal here, I don't have a replacement for this gasket here, so I might have to wait to put this back together when I get one because this looks really loose. So I'm gonna have someone else who knows more about this than myself take a look at this and let me know what they think I need to do. I don't know if that is a replaceable part or not because it looks, actually, yeah, that should be. It just peels up here in the back. So that's one, and I'm gonna make sure I keep these on the same side. So this one here is going to be on the passenger side, and then this one here is going to be my driver's side. But otherwise, there's no clean metal, and I don't know why, but if there's clean metal on this side, then that's bad. I'm not sure why, but I don't have any clean metal. It's all discolored, which, you know, that kind of goes opposite what you would think, but that doesn't look bad. I'm just a little curious about this built up stuff here. I might have to take a wire brush too, but anyways, I'm going to have someone else look at it, and I will let you know what they say. Okay guys, so once you have your intercooler cores out, when they pop out, either one of two things is going to happen. One, your gasket is going to come off with your intercooler core, which, great, then you can just pop it off of your intercooler. Mine did not. My gasket is stuck on there, and so, I mean, that's a simple way, or a simple thing. You just want to get a very fine pick here, get it on there, and gently run the pick around the edge, and it'll pop off. Okay guys, so obviously, you know, we have everything pulled out, and I would tell you I was going to talk to somebody about the buildup and the disfiguration or the discoloration on these. Got a hold of Jose from Merc Racing, which he was actually supposed to be here this weekend. We were going to do this all together, but then when I couldn't get the parts to rebuild the injectors, and those won't be here for another few days, you know, it wasn't worth it for him coming down because we wouldn't be able to get the car back together. So he stayed home. I worked on this. Today is Sunday. The car's gonna be down until at least Tuesday evening when I get the parts in. So I'm going to work on cleaning up these cores, but I sent the pictures of them and video of them to Jose because we're chasing an issue with IATs. And he said, you know what, the buildup on this is pretty bad. There's a lot of buildup. More than likely, this is clogged not to the point where it's not circulating engine coolant very well, but to the point where it's not doing it as efficient as possible, and it's probably resulting in that high IET issue that I'm having, because it's not absurdly high, it's pretty much just right over the limit, and we're trying to bring them down. So we're going to be cleaning these today. We're going to be doing a soak in Simple Green. Shout out to Suited Up to the Nines on Instagram. Josh, he's the one that taught me how to do this. He did it on his, and basically they went from looking like this to looking brand new after a 12-hour soak. So we're going to take these things. We're going to get this gasket off. You don't want any degreaser getting on this gasket. I haven't been able to find an actual replacement gasket. I found the part on the Audi parts diagram, but there's not a part number for it. So on Monday, I'm gonna go and see if they have these that I can just buy separately, because it's a little loose. But talking to some people, including Jose from Merc Racing, I should be able to reuse this just fine. We're just gonna clean it up pretty well. But I'm going to take this off so it doesn't soak. We're just gonna soak the actual entire brick here. I am going to remove my plugs, the bleeder screws. I'm going to get those out of here, remove everything I can get off of this. We're going to do a soak. I'm probably going to soak them close to 24 hours and then see how it does. We'll rinse them off, and then if there's anything else that's really stubborn, we'll use a little bit of brake cleaner and a soft bristle brush to try and really get them cleaned up. Do not use brake cleaner on any of the rubber seals. It'll deteriorate the rubber. So make sure it's only on metal that you use that. And then we got to make sure that it dries out fully before we put it all back together. Do not degrease anything inside of the supercharger. Like if you want to clean up this mating area here, that's one thing, but don't get a lot in there because there are bearings and you don't want to degrease your bearings. So let's go ahead and fill up the bucket, and I'll show you what we're going to use and we'll get started. Okay, so let's mix up our solution to soak these things in. I'm literally just going to do an entire gallon jug of the Simple Green. And then I'm going to go fill this jug with water, just regular tap water. And I'll pour it in here, mix it up, and then we will set these intercooler bricks in and let the soak begin. All right, so here's the water. We're just going to pour this in. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. I'll show you on the bottle the ratio guide. By the way, I misspoke when I was telling you guys about taking the gasket off the bricks. I said don't get any degreaser on them. You can actually clean those with degreaser. It's safe for the rubber. I was thinking of brake clean, because we're going to do this soak, and whatever doesn't come off with this soak, we're going to try and remove with brake clean afterwards. But you don't want to get brake clean on anything that is rubber, because it will deteriorate the rubber. Degreaser, on the other hand, is fine. If you don't know, Simple Green is a all-natural, biodegradable, safe environment stuff. There are the dilution stuff. There's heavy duty, general purpose, like cleaning. We're going for heavy duty, full strength, 1-to-1 dilution. So 1 jug of this, 1 jug of regular tap water. Let's get the bricks in. I've written on each end in Sharpie, passenger and driver, and silver Sharpie. It's hard to see in the camera. I don't know if that will stay on there. Now, my 1-to-1 is not enough, so we're going to go get some more. Luckily, I have a second bottle of it. Hands are slippery. There you go. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get another jug of water. All right, and the last bit of water. That is about perfect. End on end. They're not completely submerged, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let them roll, or I'm gonna let them soak for probably about 12 hours overnight, and then I'll probably flip them over to let the other end soak and let those go for another 12 hours. And then we'll pull them out and see how it looks. There you go. These were standing end on end, and that kept them out of the bucket. But if I take these and I flip them over, then they get completely submerged. But what I want to do is make sure that the simple grain gets all the way in, and so I'm going to flip this over to make sure that the bleed port on the bottom gets completely full, or so that the actual inside of it gets completely full. There we go. And now we wait. One thing I am going to do while these are soaking, remember we talked about cleaning these. I'm going to dip these in this, and I'm going to just wipe them down with a paper towel just to clean these up, because these are a little crusty as well. So I'm just going to rub these off with this degreaser, see how this works. Not putting too much stress. You don't want these to stretch or anything like that if you're reusing them. So be really gentle. Definitely don't tug on this piece because it's really thin and you don't want it to snap. We're just trying to clean these up a little bit. Be real good and gentle. Like I can feel a little nick or so here in this, but the end that this goes in, there's another gasket that seals the intercooler into the supercharger. So this isn't a huge, I mean, you have to have this on there, but it's not, if it's a little loose and whatnot going back in, it's not going to cause anything in the supercharger to leak. But hopefully on Monday, I'll be able to find out if I can get a replacement O-ring. I'm going to do the other one and let these sit out to dry. Okay, so while I got that stuff soaking, we can go ahead and prep some other stuff. This is your crossover pipe that sits on the other side of the supercharger. And remember, we got to replace the gaskets that are in here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember, all of the parts that we use to replace will be in the description. So just use a little pick to pull these out. They're a little crusty, but these actually aren't too bad, especially for a car with over 100,000 miles on it. And I think that I'm going to toss this in the bucket to soak with the intercooler cores as well. It's just, you know, it's plastic. There's some crusty stuff in here. Instead of trying to scrape at this and get it clean, I'm going to toss this in there and let it soak with the intercooler cores and get it nice and cleaned up, because luckily none of this is broken. I don't have to replace this piece. So the other thing I'm going to work on, I'm going to try to, is cleaning up the buildup that's on the inside of here. What you don't want to do is spray any degreaser or brake clean way in there, because you don't want to run the risk of getting your any degreaser or brake clean to the bearings of the supercharger and dry them out. That would not be good. But we're going to use some brake clean sprayed on a rag. We're going to wipe it down really good. We're going to try and clean up the surface area here for the gasket. We'll need to make sure that's nice and clean on both sides, and we'll flip it around and do it on the other end as well. So let's see how this works. Okay, I just want to show you guys how it's going with the cleaning. So this is what, I'm trying to get a good light on it in here so you can see. That's what both sides look like. You can see all the buildup around the edge. It's all on the left, bottom, right side. There's even some, can't really get an angle on it, but some on the top. I'm literally just going and cleaning this surface here, this inside surface. I'm not worrying about anything too deep in the supercharger because I don't want to get any cleaning materials in there, and it's actually not that bad with the buildup in there. So I've already done this side, and you can see what it looks like. It actually cleaned up pretty well. Let me get the light over here. It cleaned up pretty good. It's not perfect, but it works really well. And what I did was I just used a brass bristle brush, because brass is pretty soft on metal, and I sprayed brake clean onto the actual brush, like over the rag, and then I go in and start scrubbing. And then I'd wipe it out with a paper towel, and it just took me a few minutes, and I got that one cleaned up. Also cleaned this outside mating area where the gasket's gonna sit onto the supercharger. You want that nice and clean for the next gasket. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side. Okay, after you get done cleaning the areas here, make sure you take some compressed air and blow out the area, especially if you used a brush of any kind. You want to make sure you don't have any particles of the brush stuck in here, which I can see a few in mine right there. So we're going to blow all this out. Get in there with a flashlight and look around, make sure there's nothing crazy in there. Go to the other side. So I got all that out, cleaned up as best we can. I still might take a paper towel and just wipe down anything that is loose, like right around there, there's some vapors there. Then we'll be ready to put this thing back together once my parts come in and everything is done, soaked and cleaned and all that, and then we can get this back on the car. Okay, we can't forget about the other side of the supercharger. And this side looks like these gaskets were starting to fail. Let me get my flashlight. If you look right about here, let me scoot this in for you guys. If you look right there, it looks like this gasket was starting to fail there. We're gonna go and pull this out. It's extremely brittle. So I think this may have started to leak some hot air towards the temp sensors, which are located right there. I think that could also be contributing to my IAT issue, but you can see it does not look great there. So we're gonna be replacing these gaskets and cleaning this up as well. But remove these gaskets, you just use a little pick, stick it in there, and pull it out. To clean this, first thing I'm going to do is kind of what we did on the other side. I'm going to spray my rag down with a little bit of brake clean, and then I'm just going to wipe first and see what comes off. The one thing to remember is this engine is designed, that little tiny breather pipe that connects the top of the PCV to the actual supercharger is actually a an oil vapor pipe that allows oil vapors to come up into the supercharger. Jose from Merc Racing actually educated me on this today, and that's why we found that thick black grease when we were taking the throttle body apart. That's what that's from. It's from those oil vapors. They get recycled into the supercharger. So that's why you're going to see some black stuff and some sludge. So we want to make sure we get that stuff cleaned. We're going to get this all blown out. It's kind of hard to see probably in the camera. Let me see if I can get this maneuvered over. You can see there's a good amount of stuff in the track of the actual gasket here. So we're going to blow that out and we're going to try and get that cleaned out as best as we can on both sides. But for now, I'm just wiping down what I can wipe down. All right, I'm gonna use a little bit of compressed air to blow out the actual pieces that are in there. Kind of wanna get my hands in here. Blow those pieces out. And now I'm gonna get my brush and we're gonna do the same thing that we did on the other side. I'm gonna spray my brush. I'm going to scrub around, try and get this cleaned as best as possible, and then wipe it down. We're going to go very light here. We're not trying to take pieces of metal off here. We're just trying to clean up any of this stuff that's stuck on there. And keep in mind, if you're using a soft bristle brush, you shouldn't damage the metal, but these bristles can break off. So you want to be very cautious about that. Once you're done, you want to make sure you blow this out and get everything out. But I can see, it's hard to see from the camera, I know, but there is a line of stuff built up and it is coming off with just some gentle scrubbing here. So I'm going to take my time and I'm going to scrub this whole thing down and get it nice and cleaned and ready for the next gasket. Okay everybody, so this is a little over 24 hours from when we started soaking our intercooler cores. I'm pulling it out of the bucket right now. The bucket looks incredibly disgusting, but let me get this in shot here. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Don't want this stuff to drip everywhere. I'm in my garage bathroom trying to get these cleaned up a little bit. All right, so this is what they look like after a 24-hour soak. This is amazing. I haven't cleaned these at all. I've literally just let them soak and just pulled them out. You can see there's still a little bit of, if I turn it there, you can see a little bit of buildup here, a little bit here. There's still some buildup on this edge here on the top on each side, but we're gonna get rid of that right now. I've already cleaned one of the other ones to see how it looked. And so what I would suggest that you get, watch out for these tabs. These tabs are aluminum, don't let them break. Get a can of brake clean and just spray it down. There's really nothing here that we need to spray. I'm gonna hit this right here just a little bit just to see if there's anything else that will just slide off. There's a little bit going off, but this black stuff that's still on here, let me see if I can get this angle right so you can actually see it. There you go. I'm gonna try and hit it like that. Just a little bit of brake clean, and that stuff comes right off. So I'm gonna hit this with brake clean here. I'm gonna look at all the edges and see if there's anything weird. I'm gonna hit the inside of the bleed port a little bit with it. Just wanna make sure all this stuff is good and cleaned out. You can still see a little bit of buildup right here on the edge. Running out of brake clean. I'm gonna hit it with this, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that soft brass bristle brush, and I'm just going to lightly scrub this last little bit of stubborn buildup. And when you do this, you don't want to scrub crazy hard. You're just trying to scuff this up just really light, real easy. Because this stuff honestly doesn't make a big difference here. This stuff right here is going to make a difference in your cooling. For this is mainly just cosmetic. I've gotten this thing almost completely clean, and it's kind of like, I just want to get it completely clean. So do not brush any of the fans. You don't want to damage any of those. So back over here. We're just going to scrub these. And you know, if you can rinse it off in your sink, that's cool. My sink doesn't really rinse very well here. I don't have a big enough faucet, but you can see it's coming off. So I'm gonna just keep scrubbing this just a little bit, just real lightly. And then I'm gonna take this whole thing outside and I'm going to hose it down with my garden hose. I'm not gonna use a pressure washer. You don't need anything high pressure. You don't wanna damage the fins or anything inside of these intercoolers. You wanna be really delicate with these, because if you break them, it's expensive to replace. So I'm just gonna get these cleaned up, and honestly right now, everything I'm cleaning right now is cosmetic. I just want it clean. But overall, for the simple green soak, I am incredibly impressed with how well these things got cleaned. All right, so I'm gonna go rinse this off with my garden hose, and then we're gonna hang them up to dry. I'll show you my other one that I've already got real quick. Let me show you the bucket. That's the color the bucket is. And then if you look there, you can see the other one is just hanging up. I'm not gonna use any compressed air or anything like that until it's completely dry. And then when I do use some compressed air, it's gonna be very light, just to make sure that there's nothing stuck on there. Like when I'm using this brush, I don't wanna get any of the bristles stuck in there. So otherwise I'm gonna let it dry, just normally hang it up overnight, and we're gonna put this thing back together tomorrow. Hey guys, a quick note about the Supercharger Intercooler Gaskets. These are the ones that we took off before we gave a soak on the intercooler cores. I soaked these as well to clean them. Totally safe to go into the degreaser. Just make sure you don't get any brake cleaner on them like we said. But the big thing, be incredibly careful when you're removing these off your intercooler cores and when you're handling them. You cannot buy these as a replacement part. There's a part number from Audi, and even Audi itself, I went there to try and get them to have a spare set of them, and my parts guy said you cannot get them by themselves. They are specifically listed as a non-spare part. They only come with new intercoolers. So be really careful with these. Don't stretch them out. You can reuse them, so just be very delicate with them and take care of them so you don't have to buy new intercooler cores just because you messed up a gasket. The last thing we need to do before we put everything back together is just make sure there's nothing else that needs to be cleaned. On my throttle body, there's a little bit of residue on the inside there from the oil vapor, so I'm gonna put some brake clean on a rag and wipe it out. You can actually put your finger in here and you can press on the gate to open it like that, and that way you can get in there and clean everything. So I'm going to do that on this. Other than that, we're going to be replacing these gaskets. This is that piece that goes between the throttle body and the actual housing, the inlet housing there. So we're going to be swapping those gaskets out as well. And once we get those swapped out, we'll start to put this thing back together. So to take these out, we just use a pick, just as always, and get in here and hook a little piece out. And these actually don't look terrible. They're in pretty good shape, and this isn't very dirty, but while we've got it apart, we might as well replace it. Once you do get those out, make sure you take a look here, see if anything needs to be cleaned on the surface. This all looks pretty good. Let me just give a quick spray. And then I'm going to wipe it out with a paper towel. If you use brake clean to clean this stuff, make sure you get it completely dry. You don't want any brake clean to sit on the rubber gaskets because it'll deteriorate it. So wipe it out really good, get it nice and clean. And then if you want to be extra safe, just use some compressed air to blow it out completely. All right, so put the new gaskets in. Make sure my hands are free of brake clean. And these just pop in. If you feel out of resistance, you could lubricate it with a little bit of oil or something, but they should just press right in. And if you ever have to take these out quickly and you're not replacing them, you can use these grooves right here to get a hook in and get underneath it without damaging the actual O-ring itself. Okay, we're going to set this aside now. The next gasket that we need to replace are the gaskets at the front of the supercharger. These are gaskets you definitely want to replace if you have removed your supercharger. Remember, we already cleaned these really good. We already got all the debris out of there. So we're going to put these on. Take these gloves off for now. All right. So I'm going to set this in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press there and then just hold it as I feed it around. Once again, if you wanted to use some lithium grease or something to actually get this in there, but mine sat in there really well. We cleaned it really good. There's going to be a little bit of a lip, which is normal. It's supposed to have this lip. Let me get some light on it for you. So if you look, there's a little bit of a lip between the gasket and the metal, and that's normal. It's supposed to have that. Your last gasket didn't, just because it was in there and pressed in there for a long time. But that's going to seal. You want to make sure this gasket gets replaced, because if you don't, you run the risk of having a boost leak, an air leak there. So make sure you do a good job, be thorough, and replace it. Once again, all the links to all the gaskets and anything we replace are going to be in the description show. You can check it out there. I got all of mine from FCP Euro. That way I get to take advantage of that wonderful lifetime guarantee if I ever have to do this again. Okay, we have all those put back together. Now I'm going to bring the camera over here. All right, we have our cleaned and dried intercoolers. I've already put these gaskets back on. These little tabs here are pretty soft. You can take a little screwdriver and bend those up slightly, because there's kind of slits in this gasket, and you weave it in and out of there through the slits and put it on there. These are going to slide in from the back. Sorry, but before we do that, we need to put the new gaskets onto each of the intercoolers. These gaskets will just slide over the front and move all the way to the back and press in here. You can see there's a little channel for this gasket to slide on there. We're just going to put them there. We'll do it on each side here. Remember, slide them all the way to the back. Be really careful not to press in on your fins up here and damage those at all. All right, so the Simple Green took off my markings for passenger versus driver. I do remember though that the passenger side for me, I had a paper sticker here, and the sticker came off. So I know this is my passenger side. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in, and this, it's going to go in here, and it might be a little difficult, a little tricky. This gasket is pressing right up against this metal, and this is pretty dry, so I'm going to take just a little bit of oil, just a really light bit of oil, and run it on this just so that it aids on both sides of this, just so that it aids in slipping through there. So let me get some of that. Stand by. Okay, so like I said, just a little bit of oil just right down here, nothing excessive. And then once you have that lubricated, you can go ahead and slide it into the supercharger. And once again, there's a little cutout on both sides of the metal here that gasket will fit into. And it's just an easy put there. We're gonna leave it right there until we get this lined up correctly. When you're putting this in and you get to about this point, you want to flip this around and make sure that the other end of the intercooler is lining up with the opening here. If not, you have a little bit of playroom that you can push around in the back, and you can lift this up to make sure it gets seated inside this gasket. You want to do that before you try and tap this intercooler all the way through. So now that we have it there, we're going to get our rubber mallet. We're going to do very light taps on this and seat this intercooler all the way back in. We're gonna come back around here and check this out. You can see it's starting to fill that new gasket there, and that new gasket is creating the resistance of this going in there, and that's good. That's going to create a good seal. All right. Make sure the gasket stays lined up in here. What I'm going to try and do here, I don't know if this will reach all the way through right now. I'm going to start these screws here if I can. I'm going to get a couple of them in there. This way the gasket stays lined up correctly as we tap this in a little bit more. And I might be able to actually use the screws to pull this entire assembly in all the way. So that's what I'm actually going to try and do real quick. Get this to where you guys can see. Let me go grab my tool real quick. All right, let's see how well this works. You don't want to do too much on one screw. You want this to go in evenly. So I got those three started. I'm going to go ahead and get the other three going now. And with these screws in here, this will allow the gasket to stay in place correctly. And you'll be able to pull the intercooler core into the supercharger evenly and not damage anything. All right, so when you do this, you want to go in a star pattern. You don't want to go around the edge. You want this to sink down evenly. Let's take a look at the other side of the supercharger. Make sure it's going in all right. You can see that's pressing in really nicely here. So we've got this in here. I'm going to give it a few more taps to try and seat this all the way, and then we'll seat these screws down completely. I think the safer bet is going to be to just tighten these screws down and let that bring the intercooler all the way in. That way we don't run any risk of damaging this end of the supercharger intercooler. By the way, these long extension Torx bits are absolutely necessary for this. It makes the job so much easier. Now once you do have these all the way down and you're going to do your final torque on them, it's 9 Newton meters, so about 6.6 foot-pounds is what I believe that translates to. It's not much. Okay, once you've got it tightened down by hand enough, then get your torque wrench out, and I had to make do with my random extensions here. And once again, keep going in the start pattern just like you were doing on with your regular hand tool to get these started, and just do a little bit at a time and go around and torque these down to 9 Newton meters. Okay, so this one's fully done. This one's nice and torqued down. Now all we have to do is the other side. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Since I already did this side, you don't need to see that one. It's the exact same on the other side. And once I get that done, we'll go to start, I'll show you how to put the throttle body back on. We'll get all the other pieces back on top, and we'll get this back on the car, which if you want to see how to put this back on the car, how to take it off the car, check out our PCV video. It's not a full DIY. It's something that's designed to show you some tips and tricks, but to also use the FCP Euro DIY video on installing a PCV or removing it. But the FCP Euro video on removal of the supercharger and doing all that other work is great, fantastic. So no need for me to make one of those and reinvent the wheel. So we've gotten our intercoolers back into the supercharger. They're all torqued down, 9 Newton meters on each side. Remember, when you do it, star pattern. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You just want it to seat this in evenly all the way down. You don't want to go super tight on this side and then tight this side. It'll deform the soft metal. We're about to put the throttle body back on, but before we do this, we're gonna remove the tape I put here to stop anything from getting in. And remember, there's holes on the bottom here. So we're gonna take this air compressor and just blow out anything that might be sitting in there. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to put back on our shroud for the top here. And this, let's see here, let's see if I can remember how this goes on here. Got this rubber grommet that's going to sit, let's see here, just like this. Here we go. So you got a screw that goes in here. Of course, this goes over that metal piece, and you got 2 T30 bolts that go in here. You've got your vacuum line here. You can go ahead and pop that on, but I'm going to put a little bit of oil on it to lubricate it to make sure it slides in easily and doesn't damage the O-ring, because I don't have a replacement one. So not a ton, just enough to aid. We'll just pop that right on there and it clicks in. So let me get the 3 T30s and we'll get those started. I probably should have waited to install that clip so that I could get this D30 in. Yeah, that would have made life a lot easier. So don't do that. Don't install this first and then try and put the bolt in. Get the T30 in there first. That was stupidity on my fault, or my part. I think I can still do it though. There we go. And this right here, there's no real torque settings. You just need to get them hand tight. Okay, so we have that shroud on there. We're done with that. So now it's time to put the throttle body back together. And in order to do that, we need to have these parts aligned correctly. So we've got the 4 holes on the throttle body that are for the screws. But if you look, we've got these different little nubs here, and those nubs will only go on this one way. When we put this back onto the car, the Continental is going to be down, okay? So these nubs have to go a certain way to match, okay? There's only one way. So we're going to get these on here correctly, and this is it right here, just like that. And then we're going to set this down on to that piece, and those outer nubs line up. And then we can get our 4 T30 screws. There's 4 long ones. And we can go ahead and get these put in. Make sure you clean the surface of all these pieces and make sure there's nothing on there that would prevent it from mating and or from seating correctly, and not create any air leaks. We're just gonna get these hand tight, and you're gonna go across, not beside, every time to make sure this seats down evenly, just like everything else we've done. And we're only tightening a little bit there. And then once you're ready to actually torque them down, it is, I believe, 9 Newton meters again. Let me double check real fast. Hang on. Okay, I was off. It is not 9 Newton meters, it is 10 Newton meters, which is roughly 7.4 foot-pounds. So get these hand tightened, and then you can torque it down. Each one of these screws, 10 Newton meters or 7.4 foot-pounds. Okay, the throttle body is torqued to the supercharger, so we'll move on to the next step. Okay, the last step to reassembling your supercharger is to install your crossover pipe. Remember, this is one of the first things you took off here. There are 6 bolts. So these all get torqued down to 9 Newton meters as well, but first you need to reinstall your new gaskets. You definitely want to buy new gaskets to put on this, replace these. You just pop them right in there. If for whatever reason they seem like they're really hard to go in, you can always use a little bit of coolant as a lubricant, but I don't think you'll need to as long as you've cleaned these channels pretty well. So pop all these in here, and once you do, thread the bolts on by hand, get them started. And this is once again where one of these long Torx bits is going to come in handy, because you got to go in between this crossover pipe. So make sure you have something that you can do that with. All right, so we got all our new gaskets in, and what I'm going to do is just get a side started on each, just so it holds itself. Oh, and these are not T30, by the way. These are T25. And then, just like everything else so far, we are not going to just tighten these down in a circle all the way around. We're going to go from one side to the other, then back, so that they tighten down evenly. We can go ahead and get these all the way on there, just not super tight. We'll get these others started. And then, like I said, once you get them hand tight, you will torque them to 9 Newton meters or 6.6 foot-pounds. Okay, here we are. We just finished doing everything, putting the supercharger back together. It's ready to go back on the car, which I'm really excited about. I just finished changing my PCV not too long ago. So I'm hoping to fix an IAT issue. And my IAT issue came from that, I believe it came from the worn out gasket here. That also might have been a boost leak, because it was definitely deteriorating. But I think the biggest thing was how dirty my intercooler cores were. And a couple of people said that cleaning it isn't going to do anything for your IATs. And, you know, I talked with Jose from Merc Racing about this. And once he saw how dirty really what they were, he's like, man, I think once you clean them, that's going to make a big difference. And then I'm going to pull up something on my computer here. We're going to go to Facebook. We're going to pull up a post, because I told him I was going to use this as a direct quote in this video. Let me scroll down here. It might take me a second to find it. This is it. This is from Justin Mersch. I think I pronounced that right. Maybe I butchered it. Who knows? But this is the educated answer I wanted in this video. Justin, so when someone said this isn't going to do anything, Justin here said, the residue films will reduce the heat transfer coefficients and add mass, acting as a thermal reservoir holding in the heat. That's what I'm talking about. This will absolutely affect IATs, because my IATs are only about 5 to 10 degrees higher than what they should be, and we've just been trying to figure out why. And those were so dirty, I really think that they weren't allowing the Supercharger Intercooler Cores to perform as well. So obviously I'll be posting an update on all of my IATs with the new equipment from Merc Racing, and having cleaned these out, hopefully we got this issue figured out, because there's nothing else wrong with the car that we could figure out. So anyways, hope the video was helpful. Please comment below with any questions and or praise or suggestions, I don't know, all that good stuff. Please like the channel and subscribe if you haven't already. Also find us on Instagram and give us a like there. We're still trying to get to 2,000 followers on Instagram so we can give away a free set of Can Auto test pipes. So I don't know what you guys are waiting for. Anyways, see you guys in the next DIY. Now remember, this pipe, I'm reusing mine. If this looks crazy damage from someone just prying at it, you might want to think about replacing it, but I got no leaks on this one, so we are going to reuse this one, and I think it'll be just fine. All right, so I'm going to go hand tight first, and then I'll torque it down to 9 Newton meters. Just a little bit at a time. We don't want to stress this thing out and potentially crack it. This pipe is expensive. I think it's $134 or $140 to replace. I don't feel like doing that. All right, I'm going to finish torquing all these down, and then we'll wrap this video up.